All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is August 8th, 2020. This is a special meeting of the members of the State Liquor Authority being held in Albany with participants joining remotely. We have on the phone Chairman Bradley.
Yes, I'm here.
We have on video Commissioner Ford, Commissioner Fan, and General Counsel Meyerhoff. We have also on the telephone Deputy Commissioner of Licensing Roberts.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And of course myself, Secretary Donahue here in the Albany offices. We have 10 items on today's calendar. They are all requests from Counsel's Office for summary suspension orders. And the first item I have is 929YY, New York OP 1272, 699, issued to Norman's K Group, LLC.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bradley, Commissioner Fan, and Commissioner Ford. William Brennan for Counsel's Office. I'm here today to request that the board summarily suspend the licensee for blatantly violating Executive Orders 202.3, 202.16, 202.43, as well as the associated SLA guidance. The licensee, Norman's K Group LLC, DBA Las Lap, has been licensed since September of 2013. The premises is located at 74 Orchard Street, New York, New York. On August 7th, 2020, investigator Valerie Jones of the EO Task Force performed an inspection of the licensed premises. The investigator observed one table occupied by two patrons consuming food and beverages inside the licensed premises, as well as 6 patrons, quote, hanging out, unquote, inside the premises. The licensed premises was allowing indoor service, even though it's prohibited in violation of EO 202.3 and SLA guidance. The investigator observed at least 5 patrons walk up to the outside bar and obtain beverages, which were then consumed amongst a group of at least 25 patrons in violation of EO 202.3. These patrons were gathered outside the premises, sitting and standing without adhering to social distancing in violation of EO 202.43. The investigator also observed at least 4 employees working without wearing appropriate face coverings in violation of EO 202.16. In addition, while the investigator was in the premises talking with the self-identified owner, Alan Vincent, the bartender served the patron 10 shots of alcohol on a tray, which the patron promptly walked outside with. This occurred in front of the investigator, despite the fact that the investigator had disclosed and was speaking with Mr. Vincent. Additionally, this licensee has a pending disciplinary matter concerning executive order violations. A notice of pleading was issued on July 7, 2020, alleging that the licensee had violated EO 202.3 and failed to supervise the premises on or about June 17, 2020. Among other things, it was alleged that the licensee permitted customers to consume beverages while standing and not enforcing proper social distancing. The investigator's report notes that a notice of warning was issued to the licensee on the date of the inspection. There is no plea in this case at this time. The observations of Investigator Jones and the pictures contained in the report clearly show the licensee is operating the premises with blatant disregard for the governor's executive orders and the SLA's guidance. The manner in which the licensee is conducting business at the premises poses an immediate threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the patrons, employees, the community, and the public at large during this terrible pandemic. We respectfully request that this board issue an emergency order suspending this license.
Okay, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
So the customers were going, so let's talk about the huddled group of 25 people. So they were going to the outside bar to get refills, or were they going indoors to get refills?
It appears from the report that they were doing both, but these are the things that the investigator highlighted in the report. I have not had the opportunity to speak with the investigator yet. I placed a phone call to her. And if there are any additional charges, obviously I'll pursue them.
Okay. That's all.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
No, Tom, I don't have any questions. I'm good.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I have no questions.
All right, with that, I'll call for your votes. Commissioner Fan first.
This licensee has committed multiple violations of the governor's executive orders and interestingly acknowledges the potential violations to our investigator, but also makes the business decision to continue to provide service to his customers of alcohol service with no food in front of the investigator. This licensee is clearly disregarding the executive orders that are aimed and designed to protect the public from the spread of COVID-19. And this licensee, frankly, just needs to be stopped. And so due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
All right, Commissioner Ford, your vote.
This licensee has committed indoor consumption, the sale of alcohol to go without food, employees not wearing face masks, coverings properly, patrons standing, consuming, ignoring social distancing. One patron was observed leaving the bar inside with 10 shots of alcohol on a tray, no accompanying food. There also was reportedly the smell of marijuana permeating the area. So with all of that and everything that Commissioner Fan has stated, I vote to summarily suspend this license.
Chairman Bradley, your vote.
I vote to summarily suspend. I think that it's extremely well publicized at this point that no one should be consuming or eating inside a restaurant in New York City. And that's obvious what was going on here. And the licensee was fully aware of it. So I vote to summarily suspend because it's obvious that this is a risk to the public health.
All right, the next item I have is 929ZZ. It's New York OP 1300057, Dark Bullet Corp.
Good afternoon, members of the board. This licensee is operating under the trade name Dark Bullet Sake and Oyster Bar, located at 154 West 72nd Street in New York, New York. On August 3rd, 2020, investigators observed patrons seated and standing inside at the bar drinking, as well as drinking and playing pool. Investigators then requested to enter the establishment and speak with the manager. Less than a minute later, 15 patrons walked out of the bar with drinks in hand. Investigators saw no food in the bar area. The owner claimed that these patrons were friends and family. There is a photo that shows a patron with an open beer mug standing outside on the sidewalk. These are violations of Executive Orders 202.3 and 202.43, which were designed to limit the spread of COVID-19. Therefore, we request an emergency order of summary suspension to protect the public health.
All right, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I do not have any questions.
Commissioner Ford.
Questions, Tom? Thank you.
Chairman Bradley.
No questions, thanks.
All right, with that, I'll call for your votes. Commissioner Fan.
This licensee has committed violation of the governor's executive order by allowing indoor service and service of alcohol with no food, and allowing his patrons to gather in groups of 15, which is more than the limit of 10. This licensee tries to make the argument that it's family and friends, but honestly, I actually think that if they were actually family and friends, he wouldn't put them, 15 of them, with no masks on, standing close to each other and playing pool and drinking with no food. So due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
In addition to that, had several patrons consuming inside and playing pool, which even if that is on the MO, pool is not permitted right now. So for that plus the other reasons as stated by Commissioner Fan, I vote to summarily suspend.
Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. This licensee is clearly ignoring the executive orders and allowing indoor service, among other things. It's clear that it's a risk to public health, safety, and welfare, and whether they're family and friends or not is really irrelevant.
All right, the next item I have is 929 AAA. It's New York OP 132-1966. Licensee is 20X Hospitality LLC.
Good afternoon again, members of the board. This licensee is doing business as Spicy Moon Vegan Szechuan, located at 68 West 3rd Street, New York, New York. Last night, investigators observed 14 patrons inside the establishment. 2 patrons were found consuming alcoholic beverages at the bar with no food. 4 patrons were observed dancing inside the premises. There were 3 employees not wearing masks while interacting with patrons. And there were also 5 patrons consuming drinks while standing outside, not wearing masks. These are violations of Executive Orders 202.3, 202.16, and 202.43, put in place to protect the public health and welfare. We therefore request an emergency order of summary suspension.
All right, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I do not have any questions.
Commissioner Ford, what about you?
No, I don't have any questions.
Chairman Bradley.
I have no questions, thanks.
All right, then with that, I'll call for your votes. Commissioner Fan.
This license has committed multiple violations of the governor's executive order by allowing service indoors and having large groups hang out and standing with alcohol in hand with no food outside, employees providing service with no masks, and 4 people dancing inside. All of these add together. It's clear that this licensee have no intention of following the governor's executive orders and try to help to prevent the spread of COVID-19. He's clearly not protecting either his employees or the patrons. And due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
I vote to summarily suspend for all the same reasons as Commissioner Fan.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. It sounds like we're singing the same song on all of these, but indoor dining is highly publicized that it's not legal. If a licensee engages in this type of behavior, they will have their license suspended immediately. So I vote to summarily suspend.
Okay, the next item I have is 929 BBB. It's Richmond OP 1316386. Licensee is ECLO Inc.
Good afternoon, members. This licensee is doing business as Cielo Ristorante, located at 1435 Highland Boulevard in Staten Island. Last night, investigators found patrons inside the establishment consuming food and drink, including 1 patron at the bar with a pint glass and no food. Investigators also noted a to-go order without food. This is a violation of the Executive Order 202.3, which prohibits indoor dining in New York City. To protect the public health, we are requesting an emergency order of summary suspension.
Commissioner Fan, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
Nope, I don't have any questions, Tom. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley.
I have no questions.
All right, with that, I will call for your votes. Commissioner Fan.
From the pictures, you can clearly see that there are at least 5 tables of customers spread out over all over the restaurant, inside the restaurant. And it's well publicized that indoor service right now, it's not allowed, rain or not. And there's also one man in the bar drinking with no food, and the investigator also saw a to-go order with only alcohol and no food. And so this licensee is clearly just doing whatever it takes, profit before safety, clear disregard for the authority and also the governor's executive orders, and due to immediate threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
And Commissioner Ford, your vote.
Again, it seems like we have the case of another licensee who maybe thinks that the new guidelines are just suggestions and that they're not rules of order for how to conduct business right now. So with everything that Commissioner Fan has said, I vote to summarily suspend it as well.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. The pictures are tell the whole story. There are clearly people that are just sitting inside at a table with a tablecloth and a waiter serving them, and that is highly publicized that it's not legal. Anyone that is engaging in indoor dining will be shut down with a summary suspension. I vote to summarily suspend.
All right, thank you. The next item I have, 929CCC. It's New York HL 1146037. License is issued to a partnership. It's Page GH GRP LLC, serving as the manager. Hotel Gansward GRP LLC and Hudson Rooftop LLC.
Good afternoon, members. This is a hotel, 13-story hotel with 187 rooms located at 18 9th Avenue, New York, New York. Doing business under the name Gansward Hotel. Last night, investigators observed 16 patrons seated and consuming under a fixed roof structure which had ceiling fans attached to it. This does not qualify as outdoor dining. It is again indoor dining within New York City, which is prohibited by Executive Order 202.3 to protect the public health. We are therefore requesting an emergency order of summary suspension.
All right, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
Is this space so do you think that you would consider this indoors even though it has no windows? Because it has a it has a roof structure.
Yes, I think SLA guidance publicized on our website says that a fixed roof structure does not qualify as outdoor dining.
Yes, I'll also add, Commissioner Fan, it's Gary, that this seating is not even, I mean, it's within the frame of the building. It's just open windows, and some of them are not open in one of the pictures.
Yes.
I don't think there's any argument that this could even be confused by someone who didn't read our guidance as being outside space. But if you read our guidance, you don't have to get past the first question and answer to know in our guidance that this is not outside space.
Yes, I understand. This is, however, a hotel. What else is it covered? It covers room service?
Yes, room service. There's a bar in the cellar for a lounge spa area. There's a bar on the first floor for the restaurant, and there's a bar on the rooftop for another lounge area, I guess.
At this point, Commissioner Fan, I think none of that service would be permitted under existing guidance, under existing executive orders, except perhaps for delivery of alcohol to the rooms with food.
Right, and there's no way to carve that out.
I don't believe so. The license is to sell alcohol. We've permitted essentially a to-go service of alcohol to rooms, which is really what it is, because it would be service inside if it wasn't treated that way for purposes of a hotel. But it is to-go service from the bars that are licensed to operate under the same restrictions as a restaurant license.
I mean, if the hotel is operating, I'm frankly just not really, I think the punishment is huge and it would be a huge inconvenience to people that may be quarantined there during COVID.
I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Fan, but I have to say that I do not see why the standard here should be different from the way we've treated other licensees. We don't think that there's any doubt that somebody who operates in New York City could know that this wasn't illegal. It's been illegal since March. And I don't know how we can count on somebody willing to allow this level of service to obey the very strict restrictions that that we are allowing the privilege of people to serve alcohol under this environment. If there was ever a time when we needed vigilance in our licensees, it is now. And for the same reasons, we've suspended many other locations, although arguably this will affect one other aspect of their service to their patrons. They should have considered that before so flagrantly violating the law.
Okay, I understand. Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Ford, any questions?
When was this place licensed? It sounds familiar to me.
It was first licensed in 2004, and it's undergone a couple of different iterations in the time since.
Has it ever come before this board?
They've had very little in the way of adverse history, so probably not this particular board.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Commissioner Ford, I'm not positive, but it may have come before us for purposes of stipulation when it changed hands. That may have happened.
It just seemed to ring a bell to me, that's all. Thank you. I have more questions.
Chairman Bradley, any questions?
I have no questions.
I'm just checking quick, Commissioner Ford, to see if this has ever gone before the board. Well, it did back in 2005. That was before your time, and again in 2006. I believe that was the last time. So I don't think it's been before you, at least on the licensing matter, Commissioner Ford. All right, with that.
So just to be clear, Tom, both of those times were for licensing, not for disciplinary history.
I didn't check disciplinary. We're just looking at the licensing record.
Okay, so all we know is the licensing. Okay, thanks.
All right, then I'll call for your votes. Commissioner Fan?
For allowing indoor service in an area that clearly has a fixed roof and under our guidance is considered indoor space. This licensee have allowed their loose interpretation of the executive orders and have gone out of their way to circumvent the intent of the executive orders. 16 people were inside of this area when our investigator arrived. And so they're clearly disregarding the executive order and due to immediate threat to public health, safety, and welfare, according to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford.
The guideline says, and I quote, "Any consumption of food and/or beverage must happen in outdoor, open-air areas without a fixed roof besides a temporary or seasonal awning or cover." So, since this was definitely a fixed roof, I just can't find an inward way other than to be in violation of the executive order prohibiting such indoor dining under those rules and circumstances. So I have to vote to summarily suspend as well.
All right, Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend. To me, this is clearly part of the indoor portion of the licensed establishment. The rules clearly state that this type of setup is illegal, and a licensee that's been around this long and, you know, also as a hotel should know better based on the guidance that we've submitted. So I'm voting to summarily suspend because it's a risk to public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, then, the next item I have is 929DDD. It's Kings OP 1309689. The licensee is Gold Room BK LLC.
I'm going to have to recuse myself from this matter because I was in the establishment when the observations were made last night.
Okay, William Brennan again for counsel's office. I'm here to request that the board summarily suspend the licensee for blatantly violating executive orders 2023, 20216, 20243, as well as the associated SLA guidance. The licensee, Golden Room BK LLC, has been licensed since February of 2019. The premises is located at 429 Rogers Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. On August 7th, 2020, investigator Charles Travali of the EO Task Force performed an inspection of the licensed premises. The investigator observed one table with two patrons seated while eating and drinking inside, as well as two patrons standing at the bar consuming beverages from a plastic cup. Also inside the premises in violation of EO 202.3. The investigator also observed patrons standing and sitting outside the premises, listening to music broadcast through a window from the premises. At least 3 of these patrons were not wearing face masks while standing or not practicing social distancing in violation of EO 202.43. The investigator also observed at least 2 employees not wearing face masks as required by EO 202.16. The licensee failed to adequately supervise the licensed premises. The observations of Investigator Travali and the pictures contained in the report clearly show that the licensee is operating the premises with blatant disregard for the governor's executive orders and the SLA's guidance. The manner in which this licensee is conducting business at the premises poses an immediate threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the patrons, employees, and the community and the public at large during this terrible pandemic. We respectfully request that this board issue an emergency order suspending the licensee.
Commissioner Fan, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
No, sir, I have no questions either. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley.
Recuse.
Oh, that's right, yes. With that, I'll call for your votes then. Commissioner Fan?
This licensee is clearly putting profit before safety by broadcasting loud music through a window and trying to gain the attention of potential patrons and creating a situation where people are lingering on the sidewalk and standing around with alcohol in hand and not socially distancing. He's also allowing his employees to provide service to patrons without masks and allowing indoor service and allowing drinks to be served in open containers. This establishment also have multiple fire safety issues and it's definitely a threat to public health, safety, and welfare. So I vote to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford.
In addition to those points, there were tables set up on the sidewalk, not NYC DOT compliance. Compressed gas tanks weren't secured. Extension cords were being used as permanent wiring. No flame-proof affidavit for the curtain leading into the kitchen. And outside, unbelievably so, a fire hydrant was surrounded by boxes and debris from the premises. So I vote to summarily suspend this license.
Thank you. The next item I have then is 929 EEE, Kings OP 1303 722. The licensee is Halsey Bar and Grill LLC.
I'm going to have to recuse myself from this one as well. I was at the establishment last night when the observations were made.
Okay. Margarita, you're muted, Margarita.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so good afternoon, members. I'm applying for an emergency order of summary suspension with regard to Halsey Bar and Grill, which operates out of 4004 Avenue H in Kings, New York. Last night at approximately 9:15 p.m., investigators Travali, accompanied by the chairman and the chairman, went to this premise and observed 6 individuals standing, congregating while not social distancing, apparently waiting to be served food. She had manager actively engaging with the patrons while not wearing a mask. A male was inside holding a drink with the straw inserted. A second male was observed inside holding a drink. A female, and those are photographs that are before the members. There was a female standing at the bar. She did have a mask on, but she was holding a drink. So I think she was hanging out drinking with her mask. There were patrons leaving with drinks. They had plastic cups with straws in them. None of the kitchen staff wore masks. There was also an exposed electrical feed. There was an unmounted fire extinguisher in the basement. There was blocked egress in the kitchen. Investigator Travali said it appeared that there may have been some people coming out from the backyard, although it was not clear to him. It seemed that several people were coming out of the premise as he was going in. And I mean, this is not COVID related, but Investigator Travali did tell me that there was issues with raw sewage as well, which is also a health hazard. He said there was a sump pump in the basement that was backing up and there was just raw sewage in the basement of the premise. So for all these reasons, we're requesting that the members issue an emergency order of summary suspension.
Thanks, Margarita. One other comment from me. When our investigative team happens by these places, it's not always when they're at peak occupancy, at peak busyness. And that is actually one of our challenges, because even places we go to that have complaints, when we get there, sometimes we just don't happen to see the place and the problems that the complainants are seeing. But there are often times when you see a location that has really not obeyed any of the guidance, any of the rules, although maybe not in each one in large respect, but this is a place that qualifies. Literally, no one acting like there's a pandemic going on. Some people inside, nobody's wearing masks. It's like 2000, as the chairman often says, like it was in 2019. Just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
All right, then, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, and that's it. Okay, so I'll call for your vote then, Commissioner Fan.
As council mentioned, the pictures show a lot of customers standing around inside at the bar, casually waiting for drinks or waiting for service. Employees in the kitchen wearing a lot of chin holders, and no one is really, taking these protective measures seriously. And the lack of masks and the open containers and the indoor service and the no social distancing, and also the raw sewage that's coming out in the basement. This establishment is a definite threat to public health, safety, and welfare, and clearly a waste of valuable investigative resource as our investigator and our executives continue to be out there on their enforcing these executive orders physically. And so I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford.
Violations concerning indoor consumption, sale in open containers, employees not wearing face coverings properly, patrons standing, consuming, and ignoring social distancing guidelines, and electronic gambling device was on premise. It was unplugged, but came right back to life and was ready to go as soon as it was plugged in. Exposed wiring in the main electrical box that was missing a switchblade cover. That is really, really dangerous. An unmounted fire extinguisher and a blocked egress from the kitchen. So for all those reasons, plus everything that Commissioner Fan stated, I vote to summarily suspend.
All right, the next item I have, 929 FFF. It's New York OP 1258609. Eldridge Bistro LLC.
William Brennan again for counsel's office. I'm here today to request that the board summarily suspend the licensee for blatantly violating executive orders 202.52, 202.38, 202.43, and failing to supervise the licensed premises. The licensee, Eldridge Bistro LLC, DBA The Wayland, has been licensed since February of 2012. The premises is located at 700 East 9th Street, New York, New York. On August 7, 2020, investigator Brandy Kahn of the EO Task Force performed an inspection of the licensed premises. The investigator observed one table served drinks but no food in violation of EO 202.52. The investigator observed at least 13 patrons standing outside the bar consuming alcoholic beverages, none of the patrons wearing face masks, while congregating outside the premises in violation of EO 202.38. These patrons were gathered outside the premises, standing without adhering to social distancing in violation of EO 202.43. The investigator asked to speak with the manager and was told he was not present. When the investigator asked who was in charge in the manager's absence, none of the staff could identify who was in charge of the restaurant at the time of the inspection. The observations of Investigator Kahn and the pictures contained in her report clearly show that the licensee is operating the premises with blatant disregard for the governor's executive orders and the SLA's guidance. The manner in which the licensee is conducting business at the premises poses an immediate threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the patrons, employees, the community, and the public at large during the terrible pandemic we're experiencing. We respectfully request that this board issue an emergency order suspending the licensee. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fan, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
I don't have any questions either, Tom. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley.
I have no questions, thanks.
All right, then with that, I'll call for your votes. Commissioner Fan.
This licensee has committed violations of the governor's executive order by allowing alcohol service with no food and generally having a lot of patrons standing outside and blocking the sidewalk, creating a public health hazard for people that are in the neighborhood and other patrons alike. This licensee really should know better. During this COVID time, you would think that because of all the issues surrounding COVID, that if he were not to be present, that someone else would be in charge and that someone would be taking the supervisory role to make sure that, laws are being followed, and they're clearly disregarding this responsibility. And so due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford.
They violated Executive Order 202.52 regarding the sale of food, alcohol to go without food. They violated Executive Order 202.38 regarding patron standing, consuming, and not complying with social distancing guidelines, and not having a manager on. Well, that's just inexcusable. So I vote to summarily suspend as well.
And Chairman Bradley.
I vote to summarily suspend on the grounds of the other two commissioners.
Thank you. The next item I have is 929GGG. Queens OP 1260755. License issued to LG, Cafe Corp.
Good afternoon, members. Margarita Marchico again, applying for an emergency order summary suspension with regard to NKLG Cafe Corp. doing business as Aliada, located at 29-19 Way in Astoria. On August 7th at 8 p.m., EO investigators observed patrons standing and congregating and not social distancing in front of the licensed premise while consuming alcohol. They could see through the window that there were patrons inside. They entered, and the photographs, I'm sure the members have seen the photographs. It's clear that there's patrons sitting at tables, there's patrons sitting at the bar inside the premise. When the licensee principal, or when the manager was confronted, he claimed it was due to the rain. Counsel's office would submit that's no excuse. And we're requesting that you issue an emergency order of summary suspension.
All right, there. Any questions, Commissioner Fan?
No, I have no questions.
Commissioner Ford?
I have no questions either. Thank you.
Chairman Bradley?
I have no questions.
All right, with that, I'll call for your votes. Commissioner Fan?
This license violated the governor's executive order by allowing indoor service and also allowing patrons to gather in front of the establishment, drinking alcohol in hand with no food, due to imminent threat to public health, safety, and welfare. I'm voting to summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford?
I vote to summarily suspend on the same grounds.
Chairman Bradley?
I vote to summarily suspend. These rules are not suggestions. I understand feeling sorry for your customers, but that's absolutely no excuse to move people inside the restaurant. Inside dining is not legal in New York City, and if someone, once again, does it, they will be summarily suspended.
All right, then, the next item I have, 929HHH. Kings OP 1311121. Licensee is the Juicy Box Bar, LLC.
Good afternoon, members. Margarita Marchico from Council. I'm requesting the issue an emergency summary order of suspension as to Juicy Box Bar, LLC, located at 2281 Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. On August 7th at about 8 p.m., Investigator Stravali, accompanied by police officers from the Vice Unit, went to the licensed premise. They observed 10 patrons congregating under a tent. You can see the photographs. They were drinking. There was an ice bucket near them holding either a wine bottle or a champagne bottle. There were cups on the table. The licensee principal, named Ashan Silvestri, was present. He was not wearing a mask. His employees were not wearing masks. The principal was selling nicotine hookah. At the time, we were researching, but in terms of the permit, but based on the chairman's comments yesterday, it would probably be safe to say that he does not have a permit to be selling the nicotine, but we will be checking that. The police recovered fireworks from behind a bar. They issued a summons. Investigator Stravali also noted that the fire extinguishers had not been inspected while they had these fireworks on the premise. In addition to these facts, the photographs also show that there's a male and a female inside that were not wearing masks. 2 more males were inside not wearing a mask. The kitchen staff were not wearing masks, like the owner, and other employees were not wearing masks. So he set the tone for the rest of the staff. No one wears masks. I would note that this licensee also has a pending notice of pleading, charging, I think a failure to unlicensed security guard. I would note that they were also the subject of March inspection due to the fact that they're a chronic noise location. I would note that we've received numerous complaints directly during this pandemic about social distancing and noise. So it appears that they've created a sustained noise pattern in the neighborhood for quite some time. And now they're just disregarding the executive orders. So for these reasons, and also the community board did oppose their license being renewed. I noted that because of the fact they're a chronic noise location and because of violence that's coming out of this premise. So for all these reasons, I'm requesting that you summarily suspend this license.
Commissioner Fan, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Ford, any questions?
No, Tom, I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
All right then, Chairman Bradley, you have any questions?
I neglected to recuse myself, so I'm going to do so now. I was actually at the location last night when the observations were made. I just forgot to mention that.
Okay, then I will call for the votes of Commissioner Fan and Commissioner Ford then. Commissioner Fan, your vote.
This licensee has committed multiple violations of the governor's executive orders by allowing, patrons to be standing inside waiting for food, selling nicotine hookahs when they're not really allowed to, and having 10 people congregate outside, standing with no social distancing, no mask, under a tent with alcohol in hand. This location has become a focal point for police and has a sustained pattern of bad behavior and create a lot of noise and has a history of social distancing complaints throughout the pandemic. And enough is enough. This licensee is clearly disregarding the governor's executive order surrounding the spread of COVID-19, and due to immediate threat to public health, safety, and welfare, I'm voting to suspend this license.
Commissioner Ford, your vote.
I would add to that a summons was issued by NYPD for possession of fireworks on premises. There was an unlicensed security guard on duty. Nicotine hookah was also being served, and the fire extinguisher was not up for inspection. So for those and all the other reasons that Commissioner Kane stated, I vote to summarily suspend.
Okay. Chairman Bradley, I have no other items on the calendar. Do you have anything else you want to raise?
No, I have nothing. Thank you all for working today.
All right, then with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Tom, especially.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom?